Hey there. Hi there. Welcome back to Ceevaluations. I'm so glad you took time out of your day to be here. Today we're going to be continuing our narration and breakdown of Fine Boys by Eghose Imasuen. Now, we last left off on chapter 13 at the end of year 1, where our main character, Ewain, was accosted by Tommy, a member of the Cosa Nostra confraternity, and threatened him that TJ, their leader, who is a friend of Ewain's cousin, would not be in the school forever to protect him. Now, how is Ewain going to manage as a confrat target? And how will the A109 boys navigate campus with this looming threat? Well, let's see how they fare in year 2. Now, before we start, I do want to put out a disclaimer that this is not a spoiler-free review. I'm going to be diving into key plot points and character arcs, so if you're yet to read the book and you'd like to go in blind, you can save this video for later and come back to it, okay? Again, the period this book is set in was a difficult time in Nigeria's history, and our characters go through a lot, so viewer discretion is advised. Now, with all that sorted, let us continue. Fine Boys by Eghose Imasuen. In chapter 14, we start off year 2, March 1994, to find out that everyone has moved out of hostel. Yes, everyone. No more A109. Harry, Brenda's boyfriend, packed to a flat with his siblings near Osasogi. Toyo and Willem moved into a Face Me, I Face You in Osasogi estate, and Campbell was trying to get into Bulgaria? Bulgaria, like the country Bulgaria. Ewan moved into a house in Obayawari the first week of March with a roommate named Ife, an old acquaintance from Warrior FCG. He was fair with a big nose, K-leg, and very, very stingy character. His stinginess being the reason he had to move out of his old place. By May, Ewan decided to throw a birthday party in his new apartment, inviting all his friends for the festivities. Ife and Toyo were helping him clean up and set up while KO went to the market for drinks. All in all, the place wasn't so bad, if you don't count the lack of pumped water and NEPA barely ever bringing light. At least there was a lecturer in Ife's department in the flat below them that would give them rides to school sometimes. Plus, they had a great view of the female neighbor's bedroom window. Their cleaning was interrupted by KO barging in, heading straight for the bathroom to expel what could no longer be held in his rear end. Soon, the first guests were arriving. Bobo and his new flatmates, Ikechuku Fra Divialo Azanobi and Fidelis Prepa Okodua. Now, Fra was tall, lanky, and playful with a vengeful personality, and Prepa was taller, chubby, and a secret genius despite his unseriousness. Ewan catches up with KO on the balcony before the latter strolls back in to play Nintendo. Ife then comes to the balcony to congratulate Ewan on the big 1-8, which makes him think, wow, I'm 18. I'm a man now with my own flat that is basically empty, but I'm a man now. Earlier that day, he had visited his mom in the law department to collect birthday cards dropped off from his siblings and a present that his dad informed him to get from their BENIN bank branch the next day. His mom had given him a cooler of fried rice and chicken and a pep talk about girls, sex, and God. He also found out his mom had finally left the Catholic Church, joining a new gen church promising heaven on earth. Nene, his mother's sister, on the other hand, was getting very sick. His mom had planned on transferring her to UTH Enugu and getting a second-hand pacemaker from Auntie Roseanne in the UK. The guests finally started arriving in droves for the party. Willem, Odegwa, Ejiro, and Chunky arriving with 2 of their female neighbors. Oluchi and Janet, by the way, came. Harry escorted Brenda and 4 of her friends, but Saye didn't come. Her and Ewan had stopped speaking after he poured his heart out to her that he wished he had kissed her on Valentine's Day, which in turn disappointed her. Stopped picking his calls and they avoided each other in school. Young love. Ewan decided not to dwell on her lack of presence though, instead dancing with his girl best friend Brenda before they both head to the balcony for fresh air. Brenda scolding him for his smoking habits while he was slyly checking her out. They talked about what second year might bring as medical students don't have exams in year 2, and Brenda's engineering exams might be postponed due to the June 12th anniversary and the government stalling negotiations with ASU. In chapter 15, Ewan goes to the bank branch and finds out the gifts that his father got him was a mini fridge with a full fornica finish for his apartment. He thanks his dad over the phone, deciding to ignore his advice to read instead, dedicating second year to partying. Now, a typical day in Ewan's life involved waking up next to whoever plays Street Fighter 2 with him, whether Willie or Ejiro or Kobo. Head to the fridge for food. There was rarely ever any food. Use 3 cups of water to bath and either head to class if it was anatomy, or if it wasn't, head to Iwerioba Estate if it was any other class. Now, Iwerioba Estate was a compound with 26 flats for students who could afford the high rent, with flats marked A to Z, and Harry and his siblings lived in 42R. He lived with his younger brother, Tobore, a medical student like Ewan, and Phoebe, Lily, her first year in Brenda's engineering department. He always jokes that Harry's father wanted a doctor, a lawyer, and an engineer, but it looks like he was only going to get 2 out of 3 because Harry never went to class. Most mornings were spent at Harry's, and most weekends consisted of football matches, watching Fine Girls, skipping lunch, and heading to Joett's, their new meeting points, before going home. If it was an anatomy day, he would hook up with Willie first as Osasogi Gates and then head straight to class. Ewan's anatomy class was studying cadavers, his group nicknaming their cadaver Thriller. His group consisted of Oluchi, Fra, and Ayo. Oluchi teasing Fra about who he had a crush on in class. Spoiler alert, he had a crush on her. The rest poking and prodding at Thriller before heading to C6 in the doctor's quarter to eavesdrop on surgeons and physicians complaining about the price of goods these days. While there, they meet Prepper, who arrives bearing bad news. The university senate list was out, and the panel for misdemeanors had made their decisions. 15 students rusticated, and 1 student, a final year agric econ student, expelled for cult activities after he just finished writing his final exams the month before. Unfortunately, that guy was TJ. And that night, while playing Street Fighter, Ewan tells Ejiro about what happened to TJ, voicing his worries about Tommy's threats last year. Ejiro tells him not to worry, that no one's going to pressure them to join a conference second year. If only he knew. I mean, they had Tambo for insider knowledge, but they both knew that Tambo's allegiance was to the Cosa Nostra, not to them. Also, speaking of Tambo, remember how I said he was trying to get into Bulgaria? Yeah. The guy got arrested at the airport for having a fake visa and somehow managed to claim asylum and lodging by stating that he was from Rwanda. Anyways, with the June 12th anniversary looming and May coming to an end, Ejiro planned on traveling on the 10th, while Ewan decided to stay in school the whole weekend, maybe even entertain a girl, but he does plan to travel back home with Toyo next week to help the twins with their JAMB exams. Now, in chapter 16, we mostly see the behind-the-scenes corruption that Toyo and Ewan had to do to ensure that the twins passed their exams in their respective centers. It really hit me as I was reading this chapter that the JAMB papers arriving late, the horrible state of the centers, and the blatant corruption that happens in this book still happens to this day with JAMB candidates 32 years later, and it's very disappointing. We also find out in this chapter that Osaze has also started smoking cigarettes, and Nini's condition was unfortunately getting worse. Now, chapter 17, the June 12th anniversary came and went. Tambo was back in school, milking his Bulgaria trip to any girl who would bother to listen. The World Cup had distracted most people from the tension. However, demonstrations were still had around school about MKO's arrest, and even worse, Tommy was still pestering Ewan. His parents had traveled to Enugu for Nini surgery, and school was closing for preventive security. Ewan was stuck in school with Ife and Keo, partying, gaming, and sleeping with his new crush, Amide, a girl in his class. He had come back to the flat that day, meeting a party organized by Keo, and the next morning, leaving a naked Amide in his bed to go smoke a cig. He started really thinking about his life, all the drinking and the smoking and the having sex and the not reading. He knew his parents would be disappointed. Nene too. Nene was the glue of the family, and Ewan really hopes that she didn't die, as it would fracture the delicate foundation of his family life. But oh well. He thought they should free him. I mean, besides, it could be worse. He could be Harry, whose flat was broken into that weekend early in the morning. Harry and his siblings got robbed. A group of mask-wearing men barging in with pistols, slapping them around, and almost assaulting the girls, if not for Nepa bringing back lights. Harry was distraught, confiding in Ewan, as he's the only one that he still trusts, about how he knows the robbers were either AK or Cosa Nostra boys, stating that he'll meet Frank to find out. He laments about why he didn't join a conference in his first year, about why he couldn't protect his siblings. In chapter 18, Nene unfortunately passes away, her heart not being able to handle the stress post-surgery. His mom didn't even get to say her goodbyes. She was escorting his father to the car park for his journey back to Warri when she had passed. Nene's death was a big deal in the Urobo community, and soon vultures came to her house to rob the mourners present during the period. The funeral proceedings were long and tedious. Ewan at least happy to see his cousin Justin, but having to endure his cousin Ayo, Auntie Roseanne's son, and his IJGB attitude. But what's very interesting about this chapter is the fact that, again, we see that this cultism of a thing doesn't matter outside of school grounds, because as Ewan, Justin, Willem, Osaze, Toyo, and TJ are all at the funeral, even though Willie and Justin are both AK boys and TJ is a Cosa Nostra boy, and one other guy, his name was Ambrose, he was a Sea Dog, which is another cult. They were all in the same canopy. They were all drinking and laughing together, something that they wouldn't be caught dead doing in school. Toyo just said the group about how Harry found out from Laurenti that Yibril was the one who had robbed his flats and immediately reported it to Frank. They then went to the police and Yubril was put in a cell for 2 weeks, and after his release, he had to refund the $200 that he stole, promising hell and brimstone on Laurenchi and Frank. Unfortunately, unlike TJ, who tried to resolve these things peacefully, Frank thought of himself as more of a Marlon Brown type leader, and he was taking the whole Dawn thing way too seriously. We also find out that Kobo had moved to the UK 3 weeks ago, his father finally agreeing when his mom said she couldn't bear her son wasting 10 years on a 4-year course. Now, in chapter 19, Ewan writes his first assessment test in October, and he did very bad. He basically failed most of them. He got a 39% in biochemistry, he got like a 42% in anatomy, which was his best course, mind you, and he got a 39% in physiology. But he wasn't too worried about it. I mean, he had more important things on his mind. Medical students were the only ones left in school, and Amide had finally admitted that she liked him. His parents had also begun fighting again a month after Nene's funeral, throwing verbal abuses at each other. Iwan only stepping in when he saw that his dad was getting ready to get physical. By November, the twins were helping in the bank while waiting for their own admission. Osaze to Uniben to study engineering, and Enie to study computer science at Unilag. Most days, the people in the flats were just him, Willie, Prepper, and Ejiro. Willem had also begun believing the whole Black Axe, neo-Black movements, and he was defending Yibril, who, true to his word, had gathered boys to beat Laurenchi so bad he ended up in the hospital and had to travel back to his house in Warri. No one couldn't help but suspect that Willie was one of the boys that was part of the whole gang. Weeks had passed, then months. Brenda and Harry had broken up due to long distance. Odegua was now an AK boy. Keo was an AA boy, another cult. Harry had installed an iron gate in front of his flat door. Tambo and Willie were being more friendly, and Tambo was determined to actually make it in his econ course. Christmas came and went, and with the Hamatan season in full swing, the boys spent afternoons at Harry's and evenings playing snooker at Joe's. Saturday nights were spent at Efe's former flat owned by Ochuku, son of one of the richest men in Warri, who opened up the house to anyone because he just craved company. Ewan had become closer to Toyo as Popo was now abroad and Willie had found new friends. On campus, tensions were still high in the air. MKO Abiola was still in jail and rumors of a coup were going around. A few weeks after the Christmas break, some Uniben girls were assaulted by soldiers for wearing trousers. People were being arrested for being too loud, too opinionated, and so the environment was very dulcet. Nobody wanting to seem on the wrong side. Now, in chapter 30, we find out that for 3 days in February, 3 of the biggest universities in Nigeria burned. University of Lagos, University of Calabar, and University of Benin. The trigger started when Ewan spotted one of the nation's founders and the leader of the National Democratic Coalition in the car park one evening, coming out of a limousine with Titi and Na Ojukwa, their students' union leaders. Ewan was in anatomy class dissecting Thriller when the riots had started, students storming in and forcing them to march out. He managed to pull himself and Amide out mid-march and head to the flats. See, this wasn't a normal protest. When Ife came back to the flats later, he told the pair that the students had marched towards the governor's office with no fear of the police. Keo had said that the owner of Joe's had closed his shop and told everyone to leave campus if they knew what was good for them. Bra, Pepper, and Ejiro came in saying that some students had burned down hotels and supermarkets were being raided. Benin was burning. Anyone who spoke against MKO, their shit got burnt. Harry had woken them up the next morning to join in the looting of Goldland Investments, a manufacturing factory that was near Ochuku's house. The boys all got dressed, but Amide told Ewan that she had to go back to her hostel and get her things. He should have followed her. So Keo, Ife, Ewan, and a dude we only know as Dark Boy run to the factory and manage to break the metal chain on the gates, with dozens of other looters right behind them. They gathered their loot and they stashed it in Ochuko's house, barely getting out in time before the first sirens were heard, and they were able to watch the chaos from the safety of Ochuko's balcony. A police car even came chasing away some looters only to steal the items for themselves before leaving. A second group of police arrived, but these ones came throwing tear gas, whipping and beating anyone that they saw. One policeman managed to strike Dark Boy as he was fleeing, his body falling limp and the officer repeatedly bashing him with the stick before dragging his unconscious body to the back of their van. That scene seemed to sober up the group pretty quickly, and Keo, Prepper, Fra, and Ewan left for their flats, with Ejiro staying behind to protect the loot. Odegwa returned to the flat later in only a shirt and his boxers, recounting how the police raided his estate for looters and was arrested at Harry's flat, but Harry was barely able to escape. He had to bribe an officer to let him and a girl next to him be thrown out and not taken to the central prisons. They turn on the TV and they see the announcement from the state's military administrator stating that all universities are hereby closed and anyone on campus after 6 p.m. would have themselves to blame. But don't worry, why the Mopol 21 would be more than happy to help anyone who hasn't packed out by then. Ewan thought surely medical students must be exempted, but unfortunately he was wrong, because in chapter 21, Ewan steps out to go meet Harry, and on the way he meets one of his classmates who tells him that the Mopol raided the girls' hostel with guns and batons last night, beating anyone that they saw, and even saying that some of the girls were SA'd so bad they had to be taken to the teaching hospital. Ewan, with KO by his side, rushed to ward A3 where the classmates said they were treating the girls, and he found Amide. Her left shoulder was sprained, her eye was swollen, and there was a small cut on her lip. But other than that, she was still in good spirits, joking to Ewan that he should have seen the other guy and asking for a cigarette. They both cried in each other's arms, Ewan apologizing for not being able to protect her, but she tells him not to blame himself. He leaves with Oluchi once her parents arrive, and they run into Toyo, who said he had to jump over his fence when the mobile police raided. Ewan called his dad, telling him that he wanted to come home right away, but his father told him to stay put until the roads all cleared of all the checkpoints. Everywhere was chaos. The students had set the local government's chairman's house on fire, and Mopol raided and pursued anyone and everyone, leaving dead bodies of students and townspeople alike in their wake. Ewan couldn't believe it. All this gore, all this chaos, because what? Just because a few egos were hurt? Surprisingly though, in Eghose, there were no reports of gunfights between the Mopol and the Confra boys. Toya had told him that Yibril managed to jump the fence with a bag of ammunition, escaping into the bush because, of course, the wicked ones always escape. Willem had traveled, and so he had missed all the chaos. An officer had shot a Uniben student at the main gates after the troops opened fire, and Oluchi says that people shouldn't forget this day, that they couldn't forget this day, but Ewan knows. He tells her that, unfortunately, people always do. And that, my friends, was year 2 of the adventures of our fine boys. See, things are really starting to heat up. Well, unluckily for our characters, it really all does go downhill from there. TJ isn't in school anymore. Riots and shootings are breaking out. Nene is dead. Almost all of his friends have joined confraternities, and danger is definitely looming up ahead. The question now is, will our boys be able to face it? We will find out in the grand finale, part 3, where we finish off Ewan's 3rd and final year in University of Benin in the next video right here on Ceevaluations. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please leave a like if you enjoyed it. Leave a comment on how you think the story will be concluded, and make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so that you will be notified when part 3 drops. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!